Almost no one worked as a professional miner in Japan, the UK, or anywhere else. Those who worked as miners were originally penniless, which is why they started working in mines. Once they started working in the mines, they earned more money than expected, and ended up settling down in mine towns. Miners are generous. When they earn money, they spend it right away on leisure, so the number of bars and other forms of entertainment grew. As I mentioned earlier, it's only natural for young men to gain financial independence and marry a 15-year-old girl. However, while the slag ravine is a remnant of customs from such an era, the economic situation has been worsening. One reason is that the underground ore, that's easy to dig, has been completely excavated. So someone might have to dig about 800 meters and 2 or 3 or perhaps even 5 and 10 kilometers to the side in order to find ore. Even more serious problems are hidden in this model. This terrain model and the mining railway model, why is the slag ravine's economy deteriorating so rapidly? That's because of this cute and lovely light railway. Well, the railway that runs vertically and horizontally in this slag ravine, this well-made railway has shortened the economic lifespan of the town. It's a historical fact, but in the middle of the 19th century, there were a lot of mines in the mountains, just like the slag ravine. There used to be mines for other materials, but most of them also suddenly became ghost towns in the middle of the 19th century. So this tragedy isn't unique to the slag ravine. It wasn't just because miners could no longer get any coal or ore. Mining towns in the mountains quickly fell into ruin. This didn't just happen in the UK, but in the US as well. Old American industrial cities were often in the mountains, or the middle of the continent. Most of them became deserted, while cities like Pittsburgh and Detroit grew. Steel City, Pittsburgh, which is known for its steel industry, is located next to the Ohio River. Detroit is sandwiched between 2 lakes, Lake Erie and Lake Huron. As the Industrial Revolution progressed in the 19th century, somehow machines became heavy and gigantic. Machines got larger, and the things made with the machines got larger too. Therefore, an immense amount of coal had to be burned. So cities with only land transportation, such as trains, became more expensive. The industrial zone began to move to cities facing rivers, seas, and lakes, where waterways and water transport were possible. Of course, a large amount of water was necessary to make industrial products. But the question of transportation was even more important. I went to Detroit this March and visited the Henry Ford Museum. I was given a tour and was really surprised because I only knew of Detroit as a motor city. But before it became a motor city, there were preparations. The city of Detroit was rapidly expanding in the mid-18th century, which is around the time when the slag ravine started falling into ruin. The museum guide told me that Detroit developed because it happened to be near a lake back then. Detroit was mainly making bicycles and carriages. As technology developed, products became heavier and the weight became too heavy to transport. Eventually, railways and carriages were replaced by ships, as this form of transportation was the most cost-effective. That's how the city of Detroit survived. And as a result, the automobile was invented and Detroit became a motor city. But it was with the benefit of hindsight, and it really was thanks to water transportation. I was pretty surprised to hear that. So the question is, how many freight trains could this light rail pull? Disregarding speed, if it's on the water, you can connect the freight to a tugboat. But on the railways, even locomotives have limits to the number of wagons they can pull, even at maximum strength. That's why industrial towns in the mountains have become cost intensive. Rather than a limited supply of ore being the problem, the transportation costs relative to the amount of ore was disproportionately high, leaving a town unable to compete with other cities. Eventually, these towns became ghost towns. The slag ravine became unprofitable simply because the transportation costs rendered the metals profitless. I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm reading a social studies textbook. But in anime, since Miyazaki covers such detail, it becomes interesting. Back then, when Miyazaki was drawing Sherlock Hound, there weren't many automobiles, so rich people who lived around mines didn't care about water transportation. Their attitude was more or less, I make the rules here because I own this town. However, in the era of water transportation, as the Gilmore Valley and the Slag Ravine are really deep in the mountains, those towns quickly became deserted. The towns slowly become desolate and poor, so the owners like Mr. Gilmore of the Gilmore Valley disappeared from them. Gilmore named the valley after himself, the Gilmore Valley. So the Slag Ravine's owner probably named it after their family too. But they sold the mining rights to a bank or something. And then they moved to a new industrial and commercial city, somewhere like London, Paris, or New York. Later, these people became conglomerates like the Rockefeller family and Rothschild family. While owners like Gilmore were domineering and made everyone work like slaves, they also felt strongly attached to the mines they owned. So, mine ownership under such wealthy families actually lasted for a long time. Even though efficiency was decreasing, families tried hard to keep running and developing the family business. As a result, there are many mines in the world that managed to survive. However, banks are different. Unlike family owners, banks don't have an emotional attachment to mines. So if a mine can't make a profit, they will stop operating in the blink of an eye. At the beginning of the novel version of Laputa, the boss goes to a city that's half a day away. The owner of the mine goes to the neighboring city to visit the bank in order to negotiate. But this negotiation scene wasn't used in the film. Instead, the story begins with the discovery of a bone demon somewhere in the countryside, and it turns out to be a robot soldier that had fallen from Laputa. What an impressive opening to the story. The boss talks about a mysterious robot falling from the sky. He also talks about how devastating it is that the bank owning the mine will likely shut it down, even after he walked for half a day in order to speak with them. But the boss still tries to entertain Pazu with the mysterious incident of the robot. I think these stories are intertwined in an amazing way. This is another Laputa relic, but the scene was completely cut from the movie.